My name is John Whitman Ray, and I'd like to talk to you this morning on the subject of body electronics, the science of bodily regeneration. First of all, I'd like to go into the history of this subject. And it begins back in the 1940s when I had an older brother who was a chiropractic physician and a doctor of naturopathic medicine. And he had the experience of being taught by an old Chinese fellow some of the different acupressure points that he learned to have control and effect over different parts of the body when applied properly. Like one point here and one point here, for example, would make the gallbladder drain. Another point here, another point over here, taking two different parts of the body, and he'd have pain going out of the intestinal tract and start the peristaltic action moving. So there's many different ways that you can begin to understand that different pressure points have certain reflex action on certain parts of the body. Now, this began in the late 1940s, and then into the 1950s. In 1951, I was presented with a very interesting book on iris diagnosis by Dr. Bernard Jensen. And I studied that material intently. And I first of all began to question one thought, which was the color of the eye and the structures of the eye. Why were babies born with blue eyes, and then later on you watch them turn brown, and then they get all kinds of pigment spots in them and different structural changes in the fiber structures of the iris of the eye? Why was this so? And was there any way of bringing the eye back from the brown eye back to the blue eye? Or correct the structures in the eye so that the structures would come back to its pristine natural beauty at the time of birth? And I didn't know quite what to do about all that, but I began questioning very sincerely and believing that there must be some sort of a way whereby these so-called genetic traits could be overcome and the different problems that a person had nutritionally could be overcome. I began working on this. Now, bottom line, this study of iris diagnosis continued on through the 1950s, where I saw changes in the iris color of the eye. In the 60s, we got more changes in the color of the eye and structure changes. In the 70s, I made a study of the sclera of the eye and began looking at this very intently. And then in the 1980s, I put together what they call iris sclera integrated diagnosis, of which I'm the founder of this particular study. And herein, we use without getting into the diagnostic techniques, we use the iris of the eye as 50% of the eye being the window to the soul, and we use the sclera as the other 50% of the eye, and the two together, the sclera and the iris, work hand in glove with each other to give a diagnostic tool that takes quite a bit of time, an hour or two, to be able to determine exactly what we have to first of all do nutritionally, and then secondly, what we have to do with a flow sheet in body electronics, where we have a prioritized and sequential technique of using acupressure points in a certain definite manner to bring about the regeneration of the function of the body. Now, this is very important. Now, the iris of the eye, and this is going to be a little disturbing to some of you who believe the iris of the eye does not change. In all cases where I have worked with black people, I have worked with Polynesian people, I have worked with Indian people, I have worked with Oriental people, I've worked with every shape and size of people all over the earth, and in all cases, over a period of time, as we release the different traumas from the physical body, the eye color changes in all cases gradually from dark chocolate brown to light brown to hazel and then eventually to blue. Now, this is an important thing to consider because I'm just reporting the news to you. But it does show that basically there is a oneness of all mankind. And if we contemplate that we all come from an original position, so to speak, from an original race, that under the skin, so to speak, we're all the same. And this should do away with any form of racial bigotry, conflict between cultural belief systems and other types of bigotry, if I can use that expression, because basically we are all one. And body electronics, using the technique of iris sclera integrated diagnosis, has helped bring this to the point where we can be free of racial prejudice. This is one thing that we've been working on for some time. Now, concerning what we call diet or nutritional factors that are necessary for understanding body electronics, I'm just going to bottom line this with you to introduce you to the concept. We need to have food that is not cooked, because if we cook our food, we destroy the enzyme value in it. And the enzymes are destroyed roughly at 116 degrees Fahrenheit, which is just barely warming it up. Now, the most important part of this is we have to have these enzymes that help to digest the food, or else the pancreas then has to secrete enzymes which will then be utilized to digest the food. And this creates an enzyme drain on the body, and the enzymes from the body are gradually depleted until the body no longer functions. And we have what we call enzyme depletion or deficiency in the body. So what we have to do, we have to put additional enzymes coming from a natural source, a vegetarian source preferably, back into the body to correct long-standing enzyme deficiencies, wherein the food that we eat that is fresh and raw helps to digest the fresh and raw food. The enzymes in the food help to digest it, but it's not enough to correct the long-standing enzyme deficiencies. So the enzymes are the first most important part that we can deal with. In my little book on Patient's Guide to Body Electronics, there's 12 points on enzymes here that you may want to work with. And this material here, that as you study that material, you'll understand that enzymes are the most important thing we take first, because we can't assimilate minerals, we can't assimilate vitamins without the enzymes. And the enzymes are the key for the maintenance of body health and to regain our youthful appearance that we need to deal with when we're talking about bodily regeneration. The second thing we need is a source of minerals, a broad range of colloidal minerals. Now the colloidal minerals is first less than half a micron in size, like very small rock dust, for example, or minerals that have been decanted out of rock dust, where we're getting pure colloidal material that is suspended in solution. Now if you understand your chemistry concept, the Brownian movement is where you have the tiny particles are suspended in water by the actual molecular motion. And that is a colloidal suspension, and that is what we need, because the body can absorb the colloidal minerals, which then combine with your enzymes, forming an alkaline detoxifying agent, which help to remove from the body all of the cellular waste and toxic metabolic byproducts. And here's where you see the different pigment spots in the eyes start slowly disappearing, because as the pigment spots in the eye show that the toxic conditions in the body settling out in the tissue of greatest weakness, it then shows up correspondingly in the iris of the eye as a pigment spot. So as the toxins are removed from the body, then the pigment spots in the iris of the eye disappear. Now, a lot of your traditional iridologists say this cannot be so. All I can tell you is that we've been doing this for many, many years, and it is so. Now, minerals then is one of the most important things we have to have, and if we're depleted in just one mineral, then this can disrupt the entire chain of life within our own body and be a, shall we say, a precursor for disease symptomology. So minerals are a must, and we have to keep the mineral supply very high in our body, and if we are growing our vegetables on mineral deficient soil, then the vegetables will be mineral deficient and our bodies in turn will be mineral deficient. Therefore we have to look at remineralizing the soil through a very generous application of rock dust, which over the period of time will give you just beautiful, beautiful vegetables which will be rust resistant, insect resistant, and give you a sweetness, because the sweetness of a vegetable, for example, will be correlated to the amount of minerals in that vegetable. The higher the mineral content, the higher the sugar content. This has been proven over and over again by people who are into agriculture extensively. So we have to have minerals in our food so that we have minerals in our bodies so that our health is maintained. Basically, we have to have oxygen in our system, and I would recommend to you a videotape by Ed McCabe, or one of his books by Ed McCabe on oxygen therapies. And this information that you could get will give you a tremendous amount of oxygen that will take me a couple of hours to explain here. But we have to have oxygen because the depletion of the oxygen in the Earth's atmosphere has become a very definite reality. And as our depletion of oxygen in the Earth's atmosphere, as taught originally back in 1945 by Walter Russell, he showed that eventually we would have extensive leukemia, immune system disorders, and disease symptomology because the oxygen is not available for the biological activity of our bodies. So we have to have oxygen. We have to have something like essential fatty acids, which will be discussed later on other tapes. We need that essential fatty acids that the entire body might function normally. I'm not going to go into that in detail here. I'm just pointing the way for further reference on your part. The material here in the Patient Guide to Body Electronics has the 12 points on essential fatty acids by Dr. Doug Morrison, and that should be quite of interest to you. You need to have vitamins, but you cannot absorb vitamins in the body without minerals and without enzymes. And many people take handfuls and handfuls of vitamins to no effect because they're deficient in minerals and they are deficient in enzymes. So this is something that you need to consider. We need a friendly acidophilus to keep continually established in our gut or our small intestine area, so that we'll be able to assimilate the nutrients that our body requires and to synthesize other nutrients that the body cannot synthesize without the acidophilus. It's a friendly flora in our intestinal tract. I might add that many people who are on drugs and medications, this destroys the acidophilus, and every good medical doctor will tell you as they give you a medication that you must take acidophilus with this to keep the friendly flora going very well in the intestines, or else we're subject to both constipation and or diarrhea, depending upon the nature of the medication. And I might add also the constitution of our physical body. But the acidophilus is killed by oral antimicrobial drugs and things of this caliber. Okay, the next thing we really have to look at carefully is protein. I'd like to discuss this for just a moment. The protein we have to have, I'm just going to explain it so that you have something to think about and to study in a future sense. If you heat protein above 110 degrees Fahrenheit, which is barely warming it up, you destroy tryptophan and you destroy lysine, which are 2 of the 8 essential amino acids. Now, we have to have all 8 amino acids or proteins in our system. And if all 8 are not there, then we're unable to synthesize, shall I use the word manufacture and secrete, the other 12 necessary amino acids for total body health. Now, let me explain it to you this way. There are some hormones that require all 20 amino acids for the secretion and the manufacturing of these hormones. Now, these substances act as a catalytic agent in the body for exothermic, endothermic reactions, which are the result of biological transmutation of elements as the body goes through the process of what we call a healing crisis. We'll discuss about that in a couple of moments. Now, this necessary adjunct of the diet, this protein, is exceedingly important. And if people are eating nothing but cooked food in their diet, then they're automatically going to be protein deficient, and therefore they're automatically going to be hormone deficient, because all the hormones, including, shall we say, all of the amino acids, including the 8 essential amino acids, have to be present, that the hormones might be manufactured and secreted properly. So we need to have a good source of raw protein. Raw fish is a good source, eggs is a good source, unheated bee pollen is a good source, any type of unheated protein is a good source. Many of your sprouts and seeds that are germinated and so on, all of these are a good source of protein. And the next thing that we do need to determine our health are those things that will enhance the immune system. And one of these is like your kiwi fruit, where you have a material called actinidin. It's a proteolytic enzyme. This helps to boost the immune system as well as digest your protein. The work done on proteolytic enzymes by Dr. King from Hawaii, he has proven conclusively that your immune system is enhanced by incorporating orally the proteolytic enzymes into the system, and it can boost your immune system up as high as 2,000%. This is quite a boost in the immune response. This is what we have seen. So we need to consider the immune response and those proteolytic enzymes like your actinidin in kiwi fruit and your papain in your papaya or pawpaw, and this comes from the mature green pawpaw. There's much that can be said there. But this is what we have to look at carefully as a source of boosting the immune system. There's many different techniques today which are destroying the immune system, and those things that destroy the immune system will take away health from the body permanently. What we want to do is to boost the immune system so the body is capable of healing properly and regenerating. So you have your enzymes, your minerals, your essential fatty acids, your proteins, your vitamins, your oxygen, and there are several other factors that we won't go into at this time, but those will be determined by an iris sclera integrated diagnosis to determine exactly what do we have to do to correct the conditions that we see that will be unique to the individual. I'd like to discuss now the concept of healing crises. Now, first of all, when does a healing crisis happen? If I have a person who is nutritionally prepared, which we have just discussed, and they're full of enzymes and minerals and nutrients and so on, then if I put pressure on a crystal in the body, like, say, a large calcification in the spine, I just put pressure on it with my thumb, and I hold it there for a while. That crystal in the spine, then the calcification in the spine then begins to dissolve. And as that dissolves, it's like an organic computer chip full of stored memory, releasing that memory for the consciousness to re-experience of the trauma that was blocked there by our resistance at the time of the whatever trauma occurred which put that calcification in that spine. We could have had a blow to the spine or a car wreck or a fall down a cement stairs or something. And these are things that we have to be able to handle on a mental level where we lovingly and willingly endure all of the emotional trauma, all of the word patterns that we have there, and all of the thought patterns which are the sensory memory of the sight that we remember, the visual memory, the hearing memory, the auditory memory, the olfactory sense, the smell, the fragrance of the moment, the taste of the moment, and the touch, the tactile sense. So we have thought, we have feeling, and we have spoken word, which are all suppressed below the level of consciousness in every trauma, and this is recorded in this organic computer chip, which we call a crystal, which can take many different forms in the physical body, but it's predominantly indicated like in a calcification in the spine, in scar tissue, in little reflexology points on the bottom of the feet, or just in any type of an arthritic spur. All of these things are crystals full of stored memory. When that stored memory is released, we then have what we call a healing crisis. Now, according to Herring's law of cure, which is very ancient in the healing arts, all cure starts from within out and from the head down and in reverse order as the symptoms have appeared. Now, over the years, I have observed Herring's law of cure, and I would like to modify that slightly, a whole lot really, in what I call the law of healing crisis. A healing crisis will occur only when an individual is ready, both physiologically and psychologically. The basic foundation for all healing is nutritional preparedness. A healing crisis will begin from within out, in reverse order chronologically as to how the symptoms have appeared, tempered by the intensity of the trauma. The individual will have the opportunity to re-experience each trauma, both physiological and psychological, beginning with the trauma of least severity. It must be recognized that traumas involving emotions, which include all traumas, will be released in order, beginning with unconsciousness, then apathy, grief, fear, anger, pain, and eventually enthusiasm, which from the ancient Greek means love in you or God in you. In conjunction with the appropriate word patterns for each emotion and thought pattern, which is the sensory memory, which are accessible at each level of the emotions as we bring them out. Now, unconditional love and unconditional forgiveness are the keys to apply and transmute any resistance at any level. Now, once these resistances are brought to view through the application of the laws of love, light, and perfection. Now, when these are brought out of the crystal, the person re-experiences, shall we say, a fall on their head on an icy road, or a fall down the stairs where they hurt their back. When they go through this re-experience and release all of that has been suppressed below the level of consciousness, then the back goes through an instantaneous healing and a regeneration. So, the healing crisis then is re-experiencing in reverse order. Now we find with the application of the nutritional program that the person begins, first of all, when they start taking enzymes into their body, they start feeling a little bit nauseous, and they go through a lot of shall we say, cleansing diarrhea and changes in this area. I would recommend you here to get my audio tape on the Ray program, which explains what to expect step by step by step as you go through the healing crisis. And get my healing crisis tapes, which goes into specific detail, which shows you exactly what can be done with the technique of body electronics to bring about bodily regeneration. The next thing that I'd like to discuss here very briefly is the procedure that we go through with the point holding. Now, the point holding we're not going to get into detail on because that'll take quite a bit of time. To understand point holding thoroughly, it takes many days of study and reason and application of the principles to know how to do it, and the prioritized and systemized manner in which this is done, so that you can give greatest benefit to the person. This is what we find after the iris sclera integrated diagnosis. We have what we call the body electronics flow sheet, and that flow sheet will tell you exactly what points we have to hold and the manner in which we hold them, so to speak, the importance of each one, to bring about a opening up of a series of little tumblers in what we call a combination lock, where when those tumblers open up and the body goes through a definite healing crisis. Now, one thing we need to understand is that by holding the body perfectly still, we then are able, as the points are being held and the calcifications are dissolving, we're then able to access what we call the emotional body. And we begin to feel the unconsciousness, the apathy, the grief, the fear, the anger, the pain, and then the emotion of enthusiasm. And then all of the suppressed enthusiasm, pain, anger, etc. are all released and are no longer acting in that particular area we have re-experienced in the unconscious mind. Now, there's one interesting facet that we go through, that as we're going through healing, and this is becoming more and more profound every single time that we hold points, is that people go through a lot of burning, searing pain in their body, which is described in ancient texts, the Vedic texts and so on, that goes way back many thousands of years. They call it the fire of the Kundalini. We have discovered that in our time. Now, the fire of the Kundalini, when it is re-experienced, is like red-hot molten lava running through the body. And that is bringing about a tremendous transmutation of the emotional body in that slice of the pie, which has to do with that particular thing that we're looking at from a psychological point of view. Now, when this burning, searing pain takes place in the physical body, we have then tremendous eye color change, and we also have morphogenetic resonance. So everyone that we're tied into on a DNA level will experience a healing right along with ourselves. And the people are the same as they were before, but the old problems that they had are conspicuous for their absence. They don't feel different because they're still themselves, but they are free from some of the traumas that have been experienced by the one individual in the family that has gone through that particular healing. Now, years ago, say back in the 70s, it would take us maybe a year or two before somebody would re-experience the fire of the Kundalini. Today, oftentimes on a first point holding, we have the fire of the Kundalini, and with nearly all people, within a week or two or a month or two, they're experiencing this burning, searing pain in their body and are going through tremendous changes from a psychological, or shall I use the word emotional, point of view. Now, when they go through the pain is the capstone to memory. And as that pain is the capstone to memory, then the person begins to remember the event with all of the sensory experiences, all of the word patterns associated with that, all of the emotions which were suppressed below the level of consciousness at the time the trauma occurred. Many things we could tell you about here, but they'll be unbelievable to you until you see them and can re-experience them. The body regenerates in the areas, not just balancing, regenerates in areas where there has been trauma, even operations applied to the body. And this is something that we really need to take a look at. I was invited to the Benares Hindu University in Varanasi, India, where I spoke to the medical school there, to the surgeons on how to remove scar tissue from surgery, where in people who have pigmented skin, they have problems with keloid tissue, and that's a large growth of skin on a scar. Now, in our work, when we take a person back through the trauma of the operation, they will actually feel the scar tissue, they will feel the knife cutting the skin, they will re-experience the anesthetic, which will be removed from the body, and people in the room will smell it as it's escaping the human body. They'll go back through the trauma of the operation, and when they're done, oftentimes there's not so much as a line where the scar tissue was, and the scar has completely disappeared. All the internal abdominal adhesions have gone away, and the body has come back to a normal function. Now, this we demonstrated at two medical schools there in India, and we had a great time to answer their questions, and they're totally receptive to what we were saying. And because they haven't seen it before, because of their attitude toward yoga and meditation and alternative medicine, the medical doctors are very, very open toward this type of therapy. And so we're in the process of getting body electronics established in India at this time. Now, after we get through the emotional body and we re-experience the burning, searing pain, or what we call the Kundalini fire, we have to let you understand that this is the beginning of law. It's not the end, even though many people through their yogic meditations look for this burning, searing pain as an end-all. But it's not an end-all. It's the beginning, because this then gives us access to the mental body, where we're able to take a look at the thought patterns that we have created that are then created out into the universe, causing the universe to change and mold around the thought patterns that we have created. And when we see what thought patterns we have created, we then have the techniques available to remember the thought pattern, remember the duality of that thought pattern. We're able to encompass those dualities and go through what we call the vibration of regeneration, where the body goes through tremendous transformation to the releasing of all the emotionality and the unbelief that we've had, the false belief systems that we've had, and so on. And this then gives us access to the mental body, where we can then start changing the thought patterns which have created conditions in our body which have been undesirable. Not only our body, but our environment. And when those thought patterns change, the entire universe goes through a spontaneous change with it. And therefore we find, through what we observe, is that the thought patterns that we have literally have an influence upon all life and matter around us in our particular universe. After we have been trained sufficiently in our nutritional concepts and the laws that govern the human mind, we call this health in the human mind. And after we're trained in that sufficiently, which is the most important foundation stone of the pyramidal structure that we're dealing with, once we get that health in the human mind under our belts, now remember, this is the most important part. If we don't get that, we will not be able to apply satisfactorily the techniques of body electronics. Many people say, I don't want to fool with all that mental nonsense. I want to get right down to point holding. Well, let me say this, it's a very dangerous game, because if they don't know what the point holding is going to bring up, because it's such a powerful technique, it's the most powerful technique on the face of the earth today, And if people don't know how to handle it, they're certainly going to mishandle it, and people are going to be hurt over it. Therefore, we want to understand that we are not here to elicit pain by pressing a point. We're here to trigger the release of that pain which is locked into the tissue, which the person is able to lovingly and willingly experience at their own rate of speed, and not due to trauma which is inflicted on a person irresponsibly. This is wherein, on the point holding, we need to understand the healing crisis, we need to understand the nutritional factors, we need to understand what's going on with the nutritional factors and the healing crisis so that we have an understanding of that. A little knowledge, my friends, is a very, very dangerous thing. And we don't want to hurry into point holding until we get the basics well understood. So your job then is to educate people, educate people, educate people, and not just tell them, come on, I want to hold your points. You have a stroke, I want to get your feeling and nerve supply back, I want to hold your points. Nonsense. Let them ask, let them come at the door, let them get their training first, and then after they have their training and they're on a good nutritional program for a week or two, then we'll worry about holding points, and then we'll get the results because they know what to expect. Now the first point that we hold is a point which is approximating GB20 on the back of the neck. It has to be held a certain way to get the results. If it's not held that way, or you're off a fourth of an inch, you don't get the results you're looking for. So with this point holding on this, what we call the STO point, S standing for sternocleidomastoideus muscle, T standing for trapezius muscle, and O standing for occiput, is actually between those two muscle systems, pointing inward and upward a certain way, and it's right below the occiput about, maybe 5/8 of an inch. So you're not touching the skull. You're moving in very close to the spine, but between those two muscle systems, but moving in close to the spine below the occiput. Now by holding that particular point properly, which you'll learn how to do, you find that with a stroke patient, for example, their arm is all up in a claw, you know, their legs, they're dragging around with them, they're having a hard time expressing themselves verbally. After the person is nutritionally prepared, as we had mentioned before, and they're having their points held properly, suddenly the nerve supply is restored down through the arm and the leg, and they're able to walk again, they're able to move their arm again, and they're back to full normal activity. Unless there has been brain damage, which will take a little longer to reconstruct. But it will reconstruct in time as we get the nerve supply and circulation into that area, and the person is able to re-experience the traumas which may have been involved in association with the stroke. Some of these take a little while, but most of them come back very, very quickly after the first 2 or 3 point holdings. They're feeling wonderful, and they're able to move again, which they couldn't before. They're able to talk again, which they couldn't before. The same thing is true with MS. You know, people are around on their crutches or their wheelchairs, their legs are numb, their hands are numb, they can hardly move, they can hardly talk, and they say it's the destruction of the myelin sheath, which helps with synaptic transmission and so on. Now, we know that when the points are held properly, all the feeling, the nerve supply, comes back down into the tissues, and the person has feeling in just a matter of an hour or two, where before they had no feeling. And all of that with just a little gentle pinch test, where it'll be an ouch. Before they didn't feel a thing. With either stroke or with your MS or with any type of shock to the body where there's a lack of feeling, people who've had operations, or their bodies come out fairly numb and they just don't feel any sensory feeling again in some areas. Now, with the point holding, this brings it back. With the point holding, and there's probably more than 1,000 points, we use about 200 points basically, but with some points you use on an individual only once, like from an acupuncture text, but it applies directly to them. And then a year later, you'll never use it. Maybe once in a lifetime you'll use it. But this point holding is quite involved, and it just doesn't happen where you hold this point and everyone gets well. It's not like taking a pill and you're well type of thing. It's an ongoing thing to rebuild the body, the function of the mind, the control of the emotionality, so people can live normal lives. So this point holding here is exceedingly important. But with that comes regeneration of tissue, rebuilding of structure, and, shall I say this, to the happiness, constructiveness, forgiveness, and love of people, so that they can learn to live this type of a normal life. Now the question may arise about point holding. What can you do for a sore back, or what can you do for a curvature of the spine or calcifications in the spine? Let me point this out as gently as I can. In all cases where there has been spinal injury that has been suppressed below the level of consciousness, when we're able to tap into the source of the pain that's locked into the tissues, and we release that from that little calcification, which we call the computer chip full of stored memory, when that's released, then we re-experience and release with love and forgiveness the pain that's locked in there, and then the spinal injury corrects itself. Now this is hard for a lot of people to understand, but I'm just simply telling you the truth. We fix broken bones, and the broken bones in some cases can be fixed very, very quickly, in a matter of seconds in some cases. And we had a seminar here in Melbourne, Australia, where this one gentleman, for a number of years, I think about 19 years, I believe, he had a bone that didn't heal properly, where when he takes his hands, he could only take his left hand and hold it about a 45-degree angle, according to his own words, because this bone in his wrist and above his wrist had never healed. I went and felt that, and there's a big ridge across the bone structure where it had never healed properly. I simply took and held that for about 30 seconds, and he went through the trauma of how he had hurt it when he was about 14, I believe, years of age. And this thing straightened out noticeably to him and to me. And after it was over and done with, the bones, now he can take his hands and hold them out like this, normally. Now, here's where we can heal old calcifications on old broken bones that haven't healed properly, broken leg bones that haven't healed properly. And when those heal properly and the body returns to its full normal function and capacity, we're home free. Now this is important for you to understand, is the body regenerates and heals. Your back problems, where a person has a curvature of the spine related to some old injury of falling off of a truck or something, then when we are able to release that trauma, the spine will straighten out. The calcifications in the spine will dissolve, so that then with a good, competent osteopath or chiropractor or naturopathic physician who's trained in manipulation, we can take those bone structures and manipulate them right back into position without doing a lot of damage to the tissues by a forceful manipulation, which everyone abhors. But just a gentle manipulation, the bones go into place and everything is fine. Now, here is where it's important that if the calcifications are, let's say that we have a vertebrae that's really out, and it's twisted and pinching a nerve, and it's all calcified so we can't adjust it properly. Okay? If we dissolve the calcification that's locking that into a subluxated position, and then that is able then to move back into place with an adjustment, then that releases the pinched nerve to a certain organ of the body, and then that organ is capable of having the nerve supply and circulation restored to that organ, and then it begins to heal. Now this is such an important thing that we're dealing with. We simply cannot let this thing go by without people taking notice of it. Now the problem is, for the professional, is it takes a long time. But for the permanent healing of the patient, this is what we're looking for, and not just a quick fix where 5 minutes you're into an office and 5 minutes later you're out. We want something that's going to permanently heal the person, shall we say, which will help them to permanently heal themselves. Because we're not waving a magic wand over anybody, we're helping them to heal themselves through the application of the laws of love, light, and perfection, which we're teaching in our extensive seminars. Now I really want to share with you something that is, shall we say, the crowning glory of the physical work that I have developed and have given to humanity. And this is concerning what we call cranial electronics. Now, after the person is nutritionally prepared, and after they've gone through the point holding and have their hormonal system is working well, their back is completely straight, their neck is straight and free from pain and distress, the tailbone, which in most people is tucked under like this, comes back to a full normal position, and we have the antenna straight for the body. Then, at that point of time, we are then able to go to cranial work, what we call cranial electronics. And we go and release all of the genetic inherited, locked-in pain that we have inherited from our ancestors, and the head structure, as proven by the work of Dr. Robert Whiteside, where he has supervised a number of cranials and has seen, shall I use the word, dynamic structural changes in the cranial structure, which is directly related statistically to psychological conditions, or shall we say traits that can be statistically proven, where there's 93 traits tied in to the structures of the skull. Now, when the structures of the skull change shape through the application of cranial electronics, then the different psychological and physical traits change also, which are statistically documented, and the facial structures change. The bone structures actually go through a dramatic change. The alveolar arch and all of the teeth go through changes of how they are positioned in the mouth. And the body goes through, shall we say, a change from an asymmetrical condition to a symmetrical condition. Now, some of the theories involved in this are taught in cranial electronics, but I'd like to touch on that now. The sun is known through National Aeronautics and Space Administration. The sun is known to generate an 8 hertz frequency, roughly 7.83. Now, that so-called 8 hertz frequency, they have found that the Earth resonates to that 8 hertz frequency that the sun is generating. Now, that'll vary somewhat depending upon how far away the Earth is from the sun as it traverses, or shall we say, goes around the sun. Now, our bodies are literally made from the dust of the earth, so that when all extraneous energies are removed due to the suppression of our mind and the distortion of the energies of our physical body, then our physical body will resonate at 8 hertz. And also, because we have an intelligence occupying this physical body, it will generate 8 hertz. So, when we have less than love conditions in our mind, which create distortions in this 8 hertz energy field that we're trying to maintain, we will have problems that will cause calcifications of the bone structures of the skull, which some people call a lesion. And when the skull structure of the skull, the bone structures, the articulations between the bones that are quite refined, when those articulations are frozen up and cannot move, where normally they're moving like this every time we breathe, about 14 to 16 times a minute, one sutural lock or calcification or lesion will tend to lock all of the sutures, making it impossible for that cranium to pump the cerebrospinal fluid through the body, which is necessary to maintain the electrolytes in every tissue of the body and give continued health and vitality to the body. Now, under normal circumstances, by the time a person is age 68, their skull begins to crystallize up, and by the time that they're 70, there's very little cerebrospinal fluid being pumped down through the body, and the person then slowly dies. But when we can restore the full normal function of the cerebral spinal fluid, then the person then is revitalized with nutrients, with, shall I use the word metabolites or electrolytes, which is pumped out through the body. Now the cerebral spinal fluid moves from the ventricles of the skull, of the brain, down through the foramen magnum, which is a big hole in the back of the skull, back of the occiput, down through the spinal cord, all the way down to the tailbone, and then out through the ventral roots, through the perineural pathways, the perivascular pathways, and all out through what we call the collagen, which is the connective tissue of the body, where it's full of what we call tiny, hollow collagen fibrils, and that cerebral spinal fluid then moves out to every single cell of the body through that collagen. Now, if that's blocked off anywhere by scar tissue or by a lack of nerve supply or by trauma or by calcifications or so on, then that blocks the flow of cerebral spinal fluid and the body part begins to slow down and die over a period of time, of course. But the human body the same way if we have a problem in a misalignment or an asymmetry of the skull. This will cause us to have all kinds of mood swings in different manner, shape, or forms. It will cause us to have problems that we can't handle. So the crowning glory of our work is getting the cranium into a perfect symmetry so the people are able to return to a full intelligence and operating with that intelligence in our society in a very productive and meaningful manner. And we're no longer subject to the blockages which have hindered our ability to move freely throughout our society in this short lifespan that we have here on planet Earth. The definition of intelligence by David Wexler, one of the pioneers of intelligence testing, he says that intelligence is the aggregate or global capacity of the individual to think rationally, deal effectively, and act purposefully within one's environment. Now you take and apply an IQ test to a person who is blocked off considerably, and they'll have a lower IQ. But when those blocks are removed through the appropriate cranial work, the IQ will soar to the level of genius. We've seen this happen. In my own experience, I'm trained in intelligence testing, and years ago I'd give a Form A examination administered to a person for their IQ before and then after a lot of body electronics and cranial work. There was absolutely marvelous changes in people. And the IQ soars to where they are in harmony with the universe. They're able to receive the pulsations of the universe at the 8 hertz frequency, 7.83 roughly, and then they're able to transmit that just by the power of will, by having will and desire, and using the thought, feeling, and spoken word for constructive activity. They're able to bring forth miracles upon the planet in the form of constructive change.
Well, my experience today was I've reconstructed my neck. I've never ever been able to turn to the side and look on the floor behind me, ever, in my life. Ever? You watched this? At least I do. I've never ever been able to see the floor behind me.
We've had some marvelous reconstruction here. And first of all, I'd like to have Michael take, he's had a couple of operations here. He's had herniated discs removed in his neck, which of course made it almost impossible for him to move his neck without pain. So first of all, I'd like to have Michael twist his neck back and forth and see what's going on. Take your neck like this. And back. Now go like this. Go the other way. You weren't able to do that. Tell everybody what's going on with it. Okay, let's go. We're just going to take one massive trauma at a time. I'd like to have Michael just talk about the neck situation.
Okay, the neck. It feels really good. There's a big calcification on the right-hand side that's been growing for ages, and that's reduced to practically nothing and almost no pain. Sorry. What else? Well, there was pain everywhere, particularly up the top at the atlas and axis, and down the bottom where the bones were fused. There was limited movement, lots of headaches. Oh, wait.
One thing, stand up, sir. Now, one thing you couldn't do with the fusion there is back up and down. Want to give it a try?
Down.
Down.
That's amazing.
Tell them how it was.
Yeah. Well, I couldn't put my head down at all. Not at all. Yeah, I couldn't put my head down at all without having excruciating pain at the back there.
How many years?
14 years.
How many?
14.
14 years.
Yeah. And going back to the same. Feels completely different.
Okay. Now, remember how when you bend over to touch your toes?
Not very often. Well, I stopped doing that. I stopped doing that a long time ago, so I don't know what it was like.
Now, he did nothing but boiling, searing, burning, molten lava pain there for about 3 hours. Now, I just want Michael just to slowly bend over. He has a brand new back there now, new hips, new legs. Just bend over and touch the floor. It's as simple as that. He hasn't done that for a number of years.
It's a bit stiff, but there's no pain. It's great. Bit of pain there. Still some work to do, but that is fantastic. It really is. Thank you.
Now, how about squats? Could you go down to a squat before?
I could get down there, but not back up.
Okay. Now, the proof of the pudding is you do a squat.
Here I go. Cinch.
A week ago, last Friday here, I was holding Dorothy's pancreas points and I experienced extreme burning. I thought really no one else could have this quite this much. And I was really having a very rough time when some very kind lady came and put her hand on my shoulder and I managed to get through. I felt the heat come through my thumbs, up my arms, down across my shoulders, down through my body, and there was an almighty whoosh of hot air through the vaginal orifice and actually burnt the insides of both my thighs. Now, it didn't quite blister, but it was very, very close. Okay, that's that. A week later, Friday to the day, a point holding group at Madrabar, I was holding Elaine's adrenal points when extreme heat through my right thumb. After a while, my right arm was vibrating violently. I just could not control it. And I thought there was something wrong with Elaine. End of point holding, eventually. And I didn't take really any notice of any of this until this morning in the shower. I observed that I now do not have a hysterectomy abdominal scar, all gone. And that is true.
25 years ago, I was leading a horse down the paddock. I used to have an Arabian horse stud, and another horse raced past. The horse that I was leading and the bridle jumped up, and of course it caught my little finger in the bridle, and it twisted my little finger almost out of joint. Typical male, he didn't take any notice of it, thought, oh, it'll get better, and it didn't. So I've had a stiff little finger for 25 years. In my very first point holding session, I didn't feel anything. I was holding points, remembering other people, and after it was all over, people commented my lovely white hair that has been so admired by various people of my family suddenly had gone much darker. And at the same time, I subconsciously realised there was something different with my finger. And the finger that I hadn't been able to move for 25 years is now back to normal. As you can see, I can bend it as easy as pie. And I'm still astonished that it happened.
I had a bad fall 14 years ago. I didn't want to jump. I jumped from a cliff down to a beach, and I didn't see a big stone that was half covered with sand, and I hit the side of my foot on the side of the stone, and I was just completely, every part of the bone and heel was out of joint, and I think the ligaments were out. And I waited 2 days before I got to a hospital, and they x-rayed and saw there was a hair crack, and I had it in plaster, and then I still couldn't walk. I had a practitioner for 6 months. He put every little bone back in place, but I still had pain in the heel, and it was always swollen. And then 4 years later I got to Denmark, and I couldn't walk there because the cobblestones were, the streets are very, so my friends told me to see a very famous osteopath there, and he x-rayed and saw my heel bone was cracked, but it was too late. I was 63 then, and it was too late to do anything. So he instructed me to wear shoes with a heel, and from then on I could walk better. But it's always been swollen and painful. If I'm too much on my feet, I can't stand on it. So, and then I had a fall 2 weeks ago in Coles. I slipped. Oh, I had a hip replacement on that 2 years ago, on the same side. And then I had to fall in Coles. I slipped on a piece of lettuce and fell flat on my back. I hit the base of my spine and the top of my head. And then I also had pain, very bad pain in my knees and legs. I couldn't walk again. And from that, Christina suggested I seek treatment.
How long had you been walking with a cane then?
I walked first with crutches for a couple of years, and then a cane until I could let go of the cane after I saw the doctor. But I still had the cane for the pain when I always walked with it.
And were you able to place your foot flat on the floor?
No. No.
How long since you've been able to do that?
It was January 82.
Okay, so about 13 years there.
Yeah.
Okay. Basically, by working on the foot for, I guess, roughly 45 minutes or so, where I started with the thumb and then eventually used a forearm and, worked in different areas. When you hold points on something, you never press harder than the person can lovingly and willingly endure. You're eliciting the pain that's locked in there. And so we did this on various points along the outside of her foot there, and gradually throughout the session, she was able to handle, more pressure. We moved around to some different points. There were a couple times there where there were actual cracks and snaps as different bones went back to place, and you'll remember this eventually. This is before Christina came, but there were, yeah. I can assure you, there were at least a couple of times where I could hear little were actually fairly big cracks and snaps as different bones were shifting back into place, and there was a tremendous amount of motion in the foot, because I was, holding it with either a thumb or a forearm, but I was also, bracing the foot with my other hand. So I had contact over a lot of the foot, and the bones were just moving all over the place. But she told me first that her foot was getting warm, and then eventually it was burning. Then her whole body was burning, and then she basically started getting tremendous vibration through her whole body. And this was all just what she was reporting to me without any, leading questions on my part or any reason to think she'd feel such things. Tremendous burning and then vibration in the body. And basically at the end of about 45 minutes or so, there really wasn't any pain to speak of in the foot. I mean, I could pretty much press as hard as I wanted all over it, and the foot was really in pretty good shape there.
She's always had to have this built-up shoes. Even at home when she wears her slippers, she always has to have at least this build-up in the heel. She cannot put her foot flat, and so she walked around the room and she walked up and down totally flat, and there was no pain or discomfort, and she wasn't limping at all.
And
I feel I have released I helped a lot of suppressed feelings in that foot, and that has been released now.
First place I had shingles, and
you know what shingles are?
the nerves, and apparently it got into the eye and left an opening for a virus to get in. And to start off with, the virus got in anyway, and the specialist was treating me, but he was treating me the wrong way, and it was going backwards instead of forwards. And I had months and months of being in hospital, having injections in my eyes, having corneal ulcers after corneal ulcers, and the pain was something dreadful. But I can see things in front of me. I can see colours, I can see light and dark, and I can see fingers and faces and rings and round circles, and it's beautiful, lovely.
Well, the evening that John's talking about, I had the right mastoid. We're doing cranials at that stage, and I had lady Leanne actually from Perth. She was on that point, and I'd gone through a lot of things. I'd gone through a stage like of numbness when she first started pressing on it, when my body was numb. Then went through that stage. After about a couple of hours, I think it was, about 2.5 hours, I'd had pain. I was getting pain in various parts of my body before that. But all of a sudden I got a burning in both thigh, right in the thigh. It was actually in the bone itself. It was just a searing pain. And John came over and asked me what was happening, and I told him, and then he got Leanne to push really hard on the right mastoid. I remember I was in that much pain from the burning. I was crying. The pain was quite intense. And once that point, the pushing very hard on the point, and then all the vibrations started down from my right foot, down the toes, and it just through my whole body, it just was like just a current straight through. My whole body was vibrating. I was lying on my left side at that time, and I just kept very, very still and just breathed quite deeply in and out. And this pulse was just like pulsating. It was quite incredible experience, and it just ran through, kept going right through the whole body, and my whole body was just radiating just the energy and the heat. It was quite phenomenal. It just felt like these little ripples. It was just like rippling right up through the legs, and it was just like this, just rhythmically all the way through. And I think it's lasted for about 15 minutes or so, and then it just stopped. The whole thing just all of a sudden just stopped. Well, I got up off the table, and everyone was standing round, and I felt my thighs, and I could feel all the muscles, the muscle structure, and around my buttocks it had actually regenerated as well. And the calf muscles had already regenerated a couple of nights before that. We'd gone through a similar process, holding different points. So they were already had restructured, but it was all the thigh muscles and the buttocks.
Now, Anna, how do you feel about your legs now that they have reconstructed?
Oh, I love my legs.
I was born with talipes, basically in English, club foot, club feet. One corrected itself, the other didn't. It's had, I don't know, 8 or 9 operations, a lot. Now, a lot of you won't be able to see this, and I'm not going to lift my leg up here, but a normal foot has sort of, to push an accelerator, that kind of movement sort of thing. My right foot, up until yesterday, yesterday afternoon, when my eyes went bright red, sitting up the back there after the first ever time I'd had my points held, I'd had probably 2 or 3, 4, 5 millimetres at the most mobility in my right foot since, I don't know, birth. And after, I don't know, probably 2.5 hours or so under the thumbs of Jane and Richard, I now have probably an inch. 3 inches. Well, shit, it's better than I thought. And I can actually feel the calf muscle working and whatnot, so that's one of the best things that I think has ever happened to me. so far. So
Since I've last seen you, the changes I've gone through has just been absolutely remarkable. It's been absolutely unbelievable, the things that have happened. I've been experiencing different things all the time. Even while you were up north in Cairns, I had cranial work happening. That's just while you've been up north. I had a hole in the head. It appeared quite deep hole, went very soft in the centre, very painful, and then over the next 3 or 4 days that hole gradually disappeared, came back up, and if you like to feel on the top of the head, there's hardly anything there at all. That came back again last night, I don't know why, but just everything has changed completely in my life.
Would you like to share how things were at one time? Before and after?
Yes, I'm still having trouble with what I first came with you, but after I see you today I'll discuss one point, and you told me all along that it'd never be any good until I did that one thing on the back, and I haven't been able to do that. But I have had much relief in as far as going to the toilet all the time, every half an hour, a bit more at night time. That has almost stopped. Might only go once most times. Some mornings it's quite bad, and then the afternoon there'll be nothing at all, or vice versa. But there's been definitely change. But every other part that I've ever had any trouble with is all completely gone.
What's happening to your hair?
I have also grown new hair in a completely bald spot. As you can see, the hair, I was completely grey, drawn on the face, very drawn on the face. That's all gone. But the hair that's original colour to when I was 18 years old.
Thank you, Rod.
Did you want to see the hair? That's been cut.
I was just watching it. You got new growth. You have little fine stuff all over the hair.
It's been cut twice in the last 2 months.
When I was up in Queensland with my father, he's really into iridology, and he was having a look at my eyes one night, and he said to me that there was something in there. It was like a black spot, dark brown, and it actually had like little arms growing out of it. They're like, it kind of looks like a little paw or something.
We call
like
it a
that.
bush.
Yeah. Well, they were just sort of like that. They weren't fully extended, but they were just sort of growing outside of this thing. There was about 4 coming out. And knowing that, you know, the green pawpaw, the papain in that has, it actually sort of deteriorates or eats away at cancerous tissues. I was on the pawpaws 2 or 3 times a day, green pawpaws, and I noticed that the actual arms came back into the spot.
We call that nubbing off. Okay.
Yeah, they like sort of closed up and moved back in to the actual spot. And the spot in my eye has gone from a very dark colour, and it's just a very light brown now. It's barely sort of there.
It's gone from black and brown
Yeah.
to very light brown.
And the actual colour of my iris used to be like a deep hazel colour. They were sort of nearly brown. Now, since I've been on a raw food diet, they've gone from deep hazel to a sort of to green with a bit of bits of brown in it. And Doug was telling me before, and they're now a kind of greyish blue colour. So.
When I first saw Rena, it appeared that her jaw was hanging from one side, and there was a big gap on the left. There was something wrong with the right-hand joint as well, but it had been reconstructed and it was sort of doing the job. That her jaw was, if you saw it from the other end of the room, you'd notice that her jaw was hanging very crookedly. In the space of about 15 minutes, that reconstructed, and it appears she grew the bone back and the joint back, and it came back into perfection in that time whilst you're standing at the front of the room. It was absolutely amazing. Within a few hours she was able to chew, and within a couple of days she was very proud to be able to say, I can eat an apple, I can crunch an apple.
5 years ago I had a mammogram, and they picked up a cancerous lump in the left breast, and they operated on that cancer, and they wanted to take all the lymph glands out underneath my arm, and I said no. I said, I want to do something else. I said, I want to work on it naturally. The doctor rang me up and he said, well, you'll be dead in 2 years, lady. And I thought, oh, well, that's very nice, but I think alternative medicine might be my go. Today, in my first point holding, I absolutely had searing pain in that breast, and like a knife was going into it. And then Dr. John Ray came up and said, intensify it, intensify it. And I thought, oh my goodness. And so I did until I felt like I was steamrolled into the bed that I was lying on. I felt so intense with the pain, and my body was just searing, burning. And then I got off the table and I couldn't wait to get out to the ladies' room to undo my blouse and see what had happened. And half the scar has gone. It is just a pale mauve little line, and then the first operation is still a scar, so I've a little way to go yet. But what's miraculous, the part mavectomy that I had done is nearly filled in with 1 point holding, and I've only just got a little indent. So thank you very much. I'm ecstatic. Thank you.
I suffer from osteoarthritis, and rather like Mary, I've had bone on bone with no cartilage. And today what happened is I had 2 of the heaviest elbows I have ever met in my life, one on each knee, and I had the fire right up the legs into the hip joints, and I can walk now. I'm walking around quite happily, and appears I think I've got new life in my legs.
Who has a broken bone in the right forearm that's never healed properly? Yeah, come here. Where is it? Has this hindered your motion here? Okay. Now, it's sore. Been sore for how many years?
About 10.
About 10 years. This takes a couple of minutes here, if you don't mind. We'll just fix this. All right. Anybody can do it. There's no problem. Now, all I want you to do is go back and remember the break. Do you have a cast on your arm? I want you to remember all that. I want you to just simply go back and remember the break. Show everybody how much freedom of motion you have there, or lack of it. Can you go this way? Can you go this way? Any problem there?
It hurts when I do it. But
Okay.
there's something.
Now, all I want her to do is let it out, whatever's there that she's suppressed. And there's a little spot of pain. Let me see if I can find it appropriately. Tell me where it is. Should be right about there. Is that it? Okay, now I'm going to put pressure on this spot. You find the pain and push. And you just simply hold it. And then suddenly it's going to start hurting a little bit. Do you feel the pain in there? Okay, then after a while it'll go from a slow pain into a kind of a burn. Tell me when it starts burning.
That's hurting.
That's burning now. Now all I want her to do is go back and remember exactly what happened. And Nita, can you help me here, please, and just bring this over here so Jane can express herself? Just tell the people what you're going through as the memories come back. Just tell it as it is. The language as it is, everything as it is, and just express yourself.
I can really only remember the actual pain of it happening.
Where were you when it happened?
I was leading my horse across a creek, and the horse jumped
See
at
the horse?
me.
Feel the horse? Feel it jump?
I knew I shouldn't be doing it, and I did it because the other people with me were saying, come on, you can do this.
Feel that moving under my thumb?
Yes. Oh.
It's burning in there by now. Okay, leave your horse now. And what happened? Right, to feel it moving out of there? Is the pain still there?
No.
No? Okay, now tell everybody what you just went through memory-wise. She did it just right.
I just saw the horse jumping at me, basically.
And what happened?
Nothing. Nothing very much.
How did you hurt your hand?
I put my hand up.
Good. Now put your hand up.
Yes, put my hand up, and the horse hit it.
Which hand?
This hand.
Okay, put it up mentally.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Now feel the horse hit it. Did you do that?
Mm-hmm.
Do it again. Where's the pain?
I don't feel any pain.
There's no pain. Move it.
Yeah, feels better.
Any pain there?
No. Oh, it's just a tiny little
Where?
bit sore.
Oh, I've been pressing on that. You can see the hole here. It's halfway to her elbow. That's the thing is the bone. You felt the bone move.
Yeah.
Okay, now just move it back and forth. Is there any pain going up and down this way?
Mm.
Any pain going back and forth this way?
No.
Okay, so much for broken bones. The what was in there, she must have done some damage because everything moved back into position. How's the pain now?
That's the direction that it hurt. It doesn't seem to hurt me.
No pain? Let's give her a hand, folks. I want to thank all of you for listening to this material. It is a very important part of my life, something I've given my life to over many, many years. And I want to recap everything for you and kind of put it into a shell. Okay, we have the physical body. The physical body has crystals in this physical body, which are basically computer chips full of stored memory that we have resisted, that we have suppressed in our sojourn through life. Also things we've inherited, so on. Now, these crystals have within them energy fields of emotionality, which we'll call the emotional body, which we can see with Kirlian photography. We can take pictures of it. We can see auras, energy fields around bodies. And these are very, very real, and they can be measured appropriately with very delicate instrumentation. Now, this energy field around the human body is like something which permeates the physical body, okay? And that is oftentimes considered to be a morphogenic or morphogenetic field which determines the very structure of matter itself. But we're going beyond this. So it's not just the emotional body and the physical body, but the mental body which encompasses both the emotional and the physical body. And the emotional body being controlled by the mental body determining the emotionality, and then the emotionality going down into the crystallizations of the physical body is the picture we want to look at. And in healing crisis, to regenerate, we have to reverse that. So we have to take the physical body first, and that is the springboard that we have to use to go to the emotional body, to resolve that through the fire of the Kundalini that we've talked about, to get the memory back so we can let go of that with love and forgiveness, to get to the mental body, to encompass with equanimity or with impartiality all of the dualities that we have dealt with, which is the source of all judgments, criticisms, and condemnations that we should guard ourselves against. So what we're looking at then is going back to the mental body and changing our thoughts, our feelings, and our entire memory, the hologramic memory of past events. Not to where we overlay memories on that, but letting go of the resistances that have caused these scarring conditions in the physical body, in the emotional body, letting them go with non-resistance, and dedicating ourselves to the path of harmlessness, the path of non-resistance, the pathway of love, the pathway of forgiveness in all things. This is important for us. Now, if we have our nutritional factors and letting go of all those things that would destroy our health, both emotionally and physically, we can then move toward the perfecting of the physical body, moving it in its vibratory rate, upscale, by eliminating all those vibrations or energy patterns which are caused by resistances, by anger, by hatred, by lack of forgiveness. And so as the entire energy field of the body goes upscale, we eventually come into a oneness with God, which enlightens our mind, which gives life to our heart, so to speak, and brings us all into a common oneness, which we do not yet appreciate because we separate ourselves from one another by our lack of unity or lack of understanding that we are all truly one in all things. So, in summary, then, we go through the health of the human mind, we go through the understanding of the iridology, sclerology, we go through the understanding of body electronics, we move into cranial electronics, and we get the entire body in perfect harmony with universal oneness. And then we move from there into what we call the visualization and consciousness work, which moves us into a total mastery, eventually, of our thought patterns, word patterns, and our emotional patterns, where we're totally into a oneness with the God which gives us life and love. And this is the eternal quest of being one with our Father, God, which is part and parcel within every part, every section of life throughout the entire universe, and of which we, as a human being, are part and parcel with. I'm grateful for you being here, listening to all of this, and may the path that you follow from this point on be one of discovery and enjoyment for self-realization on your part. Thank you very much. I'm Dr. John Whitman Ray.